Call the meeting to order on February 4th, Pentucket Regional School Committee. Roll call, Wayne Adams. Joanna.
Yes, here.
Jill.
Here?
Doug's not here, he's expected. Lisa.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Chris Redding.
Here.
Chris Wiles, yep. And Jack Willett, yes. Quorum, yes. Okay. What is it?
3.4?
Lisa, lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, on the agenda.
second.
Any discussion? Yes?
I'd like to ask if we can add a topic, and that would be to get an update and a little bit of education on the air quality issue at Page School.
Sure. And can we also add introduction of our new principal at Page School?
Yes, introduction of principal at Page School. Okay. All those in favor of the agenda as amended? Okay. Very good. Business meeting of January 21st.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? We now have a floor.
Yep.
Public comment. Hearing none, moving right on.
No, we have
Oh, I'm
Maria
sorry,
there.
I'm.
I see a hand in the back.
You're way back there.
I know, I'm not used to coming here with something happy to say, but,
Do you want to introduce yourself?
because it's a new year, and I felt compelled really just to make a brief statement, a gesture of thanks actually to the school committee members, past and present, who had anything to do with where we are now. And I sincerely mean that. I'm feeling from the leadership teams and committees that have been established in all 6 buildings, that everyone, even if they're not on a named committee, feels empowered. So we're growing our leadership from within, and I really do feel that's absolutely world class. It's what we do when we support our students in the classroom, and it feels very good to have that support for educators coming from the administration and from the committee. So I wanted to thank the superintendent, but I really wanted to thank the committee for taking the time and really feeling that this opportunity was necessary here at Pentucket. We're in a very good place. We don't always agree all the time, nor should we. But I feel as though we're having conversations and we have been living through some very strong communication, which has done nothing but build good working relationships. So when we hit hurdles and bumps in the road, and we will, I feel as though they can be handled in a very positive, mature, thoughtful way. So I just wanted to say Happy New Year and thank you for that. Maybe next time it won't be as good, but definitely as though we're on a new journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We skipped right over the agenda as amended.
No, we
we did
voted on
that.
it.
We did? No, no, but
It's just public comment.
But-
The minutes.
now it's to have you introduce.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dustin Gray as our new principal over at Page School. Thanks for coming tonight. As you know from the information I sent out, Dustin has a pretty extensive background. He's an experienced principal, currently working over in Rockland, but has 7 years of experience as a principal in Dover. And some of the highlights are his experience with K-4 STEM initiatives and healthy school initiatives and green school building projects. And he's just a very good fit for us in Pentucket and for Page more specifically. He and I share a strong point of view about empowering teachers and giving autonomy to teachers and to develop their leadership. And I just wanted to give you all an opportunity to meet him and see him and to welcome him to Pentucket. So,
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
thanks very much. Okay.
Okay, Chris?
I just had a question. We've been getting emails about the air quality at Page, and I don't fully understand what the issues are, where it originated, and how it's being dealt with, and it'd be good to update us all, I think.
Sure, I think that would be great. The town asked for, the town was required to provide an air quality test, and will be continued they'll be continuing to provide that air quality test as mandated by the building inspector in the town of West Newbury. So there was a little bit of confusion, I think, a while back when the report came out in the newspaper about the results of that first air quality test. And I know that I began to be in the position of having to field questions. So what I did is I connected back to the town, and then I called directly to the agency that did the test and talked directly to the industrial hygienist. From that, I understood that there were some classrooms that had elevated carbon dioxide levels at Page School, and there were also some indicators around low humidity. And I know from my own reading in the newspaper that the article was a little complicated with all the numbers, and that my initial take was that the humidity was also elevated. That's not the case. So with low humidity, there is not the development of mold. Mold requires higher humidity, not lower humidity. So that was sort of a good news thing. It was outside of the range, but it was on the low end, not the high end, which is all good. So then there were 8 classrooms that were above the recommended level of carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It's a marker that's used by the company to know whether or not you need additional circulation of air, typically from outside to inside. So that is a useful indicator to know that we need to have some air handler work done over at Page School. But nevertheless, it seemed to be a concern enough to both faculty and to parents that I provided some oscillating fans that are low decibels so that they will not interrupt in a noise sense anything that's going on. And they'll help with the distribution of air in some of the classrooms that have these elevated levels. And on the other hand, we're also using some air from the outside occasionally, so by simply cracking a window occasionally in the classroom and by having some oscillating fans going, we can distribute and cycle some air in, and the intent is to modulate those elevated levels of carbon dioxide. So I decided to implement those rather than wait for the town to do, to make some decisions. And last night I met with some town officials, and they are thinking about how to remedy the problem for the long term, but in the short term, this is the solution that I came up with in consultation with the industrial hygienist. The other one alternative that I was unable to take advantage of was to somehow change the number of students or adults that are using the room. So I don't have that capacity, but I do have the capacity to, distribute the air and to also crack the windows occasionally during the school day. So that's, yeah.
A lot of questions. Is it related to the construction? Why the change? Why all of a sudden has this become an issue? Why is it an elevated carbon dioxide level, and are there any consequences to that?
Well,
Can
yeah,
I speak
sure.
to this?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I'm on the building committee, and this is something that kind of has a history. When we went into the renovation project, certainly the air handling unit would have been something we would have wanted to look at. There was one there, It is incredibly noisy, so to run it during the day, you can't have classes running at that point in time. And it isn't the most efficient system. It needed to be replaced, but the money to replace it was so extreme that it wouldn't fit into our budget. In the meantime, we replaced all the windows, so we made the rooms more airtight. Before, you probably had enough draft coming in and out of the rooms that it didn't create a problem, but anytime you put new windows in, you're gonna seal things up better. As he said, some of those rooms probably had 22 kids in them at the time that the testing was done. If those rooms weren't occupied at the time, it probably wouldn't have tested high. So those are some of the things that that led up to this point. The testing was done just as a routine test, in part due to the construction and getting the new building permits and things like that. The air handling units, I think, is right now the town is trying to get some money towards the things that the renovation project didn't cover, that we probably still need to do as kind of our phase 3, if you want to call it that. So that's, I think maybe answers some of your things,
So we
but,
tightened the building, but we're not circulating the air. That's-
well, no, I mean,
I mean, it's a good thing because it means the building is efficient, which was the intention.
Right.
And I recall at one point they were trying to get money for the air handlers when they first started the project, and it was
Right, but the money-
scratched out.
the amount to completely replace it would have taken up like half the budget. I mean, it was such an exorbitant amount that that had to be, so there were some improvements made, there were some changes made. Sometimes they run it at night, but to do it during the day doesn't make sense.
My question is, I'm concerned, to your comment, you phrased it very well, but I caught on to it, to have an open windows in a school to get the proper ventilation. I mean, we made it tighter, yet let's just open a couple windows and we'll get the,
Sometimes
Wayne's
those-
smiling over there because he's probably done it at his school.
But sometimes those rooms get so hot that you need to crack a window open just to get fresh air. I mean, it's, the carbon dioxide is what we're breathing out. It's not like coming from some
Oh,
machine
no,
or the
no,
boiler.
I
You know,
know.
so it's not, I think that's the concern people have, but it's just, if you're in a room at your house and it's stuffy, you open the door, you open, I mean,
That's right.
it's the same type of thing, that it's not, you're gonna feel it before it affects you.
Would the air handler solve the system? Solve the?
If we were to have a new air handler system, yes, that would, well, I
That's
would
what's
assume it
needed.
would solve it
That's
if
what's
it's
needed.
installed properly.
What's is the price too?
I couldn't tell you the price, but it was something that when we were doing the renovation project had to be cut. And the engineers did testing and didn't feel that it was going to affect the quality of the air. Certainly, we wouldn't have cut it if we knew. But then when you make everything tighter and new roofs and insulation, I mean,
I would imagine the engineers would have taken that into consideration.
well, they would have, but I don't think
Yeah, they did.
they thought, I don't think certainly anybody thought it was gonna be a safety problem, and
yeah.
slightly elevated numbers I don't think necessarily are.
I hope West Newbury moves on this. And you, as the building committee member, the committee up there, you
Well,
can
yes and no,
really-
the building committee has done its job, so now it's on the town to do the next set of work. I mean, we were given this $10 million, within that 10 million, you decide the best way to do it, and we've essentially gotten, for the most part, to the end of our,
Do you have
what
any,
we've been
any monies
commissioned to
left
do.
over in any line
not,
items? budget?
not to cover that, certainly.
All the money's gone.
All the money is gone, and it only could be something that would fall under contingency, but I think there's like $10,000 or, I mean, there's not much money left.
Oh, okay. Doug, you had a, I'm sorry, Jill. Doug, you had a question? You had anything?
Pretty much answered. I knew there was an existing air handler system, and I knew it was loud, and there was complaints even when I worked there. I was just curious if that was brought up to date. Apparently it's not.
Okay.
I think it was determined that it needed to be so much more work done than just fixing little pieces of it.
Jill?
I think that the way it's been handled is the best way. Kids aren't in any kind of a safety issue, so to speak. You're handling it by getting some fresh air in there, and like you say, it's basically up to the towns now if they want to move forward on it or not. But things are being done so that the quality of the air will be improved.
Joanna, did you have a question, dear?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, is that great? Okay. Moving on. New business, FY15 budget. You've got it, Jeff. Go with it.
Okay, everybody, here we go. Fasten your seatbelts. So everybody has in front of them this packet. This is a guide through our budget discussion tonight. It's not meant to limit our discussion or to prevent other things from coming up. But what I wanted to do was provide a guide so that
Yeah, I need one.
You guys get some down there?
Yeah, I need
Here, you need one? All set. Oh, you all set?
I got it online.
You should have, Lisa, do you have one?
I have the online and the paper.
Oh, okay,
Everybody all
okay.
set?
Yep.
Here we go. So again, it's a guide through our discussion that I think if we could go through it in this way, you'll see that there's a progression that I think will be helpful. So again, if there are other things that you want to talk about, we can certainly do that, but there's a lot to our conversation tonight, and I thought without some kind of a guide, we're just going to be, all over the place. So I wanted to give us some sequencing. If you go to the very back page on the last slide, the very back page, the last slide, these are the decision points that I'd like to go through so that as we talk about things, we can sort of check things off as consensus or not. And I think if we could do that, again, the progression will lead us to a good outcome, for decision making at the end. So you can use that last slide as we go through periodically to check in. And as we're going through the different components, it can help you to, it's sort of like a little scorecard for you as you go through the budget to see what is it that might be a discussion point or what do we all agree on. So here we go. The second slide that you see on the front cover is an overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to start with an overview of our athletic complex proposal because that will have an effect on some of the decisions that go through. So I do want to talk about that. And rather than wait until the end, I'd rather give you the overview up front. So there's no decision that we have to make up front, but I want to give you the big picture so that when we get to it, it won't be the first time you're hearing it. Then I want to talk about the state versus the local funding, and Greg will help us to understand some of that. I want to talk about the revenue side of the budget and the expenses side of the budget. And then as we get to the decision points, there are going to be two scenarios that I think are most important and three approaches that we could take. And that will become clear to you when we get to it. All right? Lastly, Greg has estimated some assessments, and that will help you to see what the impact would be on the different towns as we move forward. So again, if there are other things that you want to talk about as we go through, if we could go through in this way as a beginning point and then come back to them, I think that would be, the most helpful. So does that sound all right to everybody? Okay, great. All right, so here we go. So you turn the page. In front of you, you have this legal size map, and you have some projected costs, and we're going to get to those in just a minute. So if you look at the map, what you'll see in front of you is the track that is out in the back of the middle school, and you'll see alongside of that track 6 tennis courts and a softball field, right? And then the other two, it's okay, I got it, Chuck.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
got it.
in this diagram, the middle school is here.
That is exactly right. Now, we've captured 2 parts of the campus and brought them together, so these 2 things are not in proximity. Let me explain where the other one is. If you look at the 2 fields that are listed there for you, that's the front of the high school. Do you see what I'm saying? So these are not in direct proximity as they're located here on the map. We brought those 2 things so that they could be on one page. So the track, tennis courts, and softball field, that's out where the existing track is, behind the middle school. And the other 2 fields are the sections in front of the high school. And between them, you see some dotted lines in between them. That's where the house currently is. Okay?
Get another one of these.
So
Right there, that's the house?
That's the house.
I don't, I
Okay.
can't get
Yeah,
one.
you got it. So is everybody oriented as we go through?
I can share with Jeff. I can share with
Yeah,
you.
we can share. We got the, I don't even need one.
Yeah, we really need to do this by the top of our head.
Yeah.
No,
So
you-
does
you-
this
you
go
take
over
it
where the
down.
existing tennis courts
I-
are right
I-
now?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And is that a wet?
It's okay, just take the.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Be easy for her to
Yeah.
be
So
looking at it.
Yeah, so stay with me with your questions. Try to hold and we'll get, I'm sure we're gonna answer all of those different things. So on the map that you have, if you look where the house is, the field that's over to the right of that is where the current tennis courts are. All right? So that, in this map, that has been made into a field. And on the left side, that, depending on your orientation, on the left side of the house is where the current field hockey field is, right? Okay, very good. So this is what we're going to be talking about as we move forward. So there are two different options that the committee that's working with me has advised that we move forward with. One option, the first option, is to only address or to only put in new tennis courts and a new track. Only new tennis courts and a new track. And by track I mean just the track, not the infield. The infield would stay the same, and whatever is disturbed when the track is rebuilt would be patched together so as not to be, different than the rest of it. But the infield would remain as it is now, and you would have an 8-lane track. This is what it is right now, an 8-lane track, and you would have 6 tennis courts. There's some leeway that there's still some play there because we could decide that we want 6 lanes, not 8 lanes, 5 tennis courts, not 6 tennis courts. But generally speaking, you'd get tennis courts and the track, not the infield, in option number 1. If you look at the slide that I have for you, you can see that option number 1 costs about $1.4 million. We have $700,000 authorized through a bond. We have $495,000 that was recaptured through the supplemental reserve, and that leaves us with about $205,000 still outstanding. So again, we could make some degree of alteration here. A tennis court's worth about $30,000. We could chop off one of the courts. We could look at 6 lanes, not 8, but we're very close, if not a little over our budget on this one, all right? Just so you can see. Option number 2. What you will hear us describe later when we get to the assessment part is new tennis courts, a new track, a new grass infield to the track, a new softball area with grass, a new field hockey field with grass, and this revision of where the tennis courts are, that would become a grass field. All right? So that sounds like a huge project compared to just the tennis courts and just the track, but try to suspend disbelief for now, and when we get into, as we begin our discussion, you'll see that there may be some ways to do that. Now what I've put down under option number 2 is, we have a meeting with the Regional Finance Advisory Committee, and what we'd like to do is to present our options to them, and as you will see, there may be a way to do this without really expending too much more in the way of money through assessments. So what I'd like to do is first represent that we could possibly do the tennis courts and track and keep to exactly the minimum, or if the town prefers, we could do some additional work, and I can show you what that might look like. So I'm not trying to ask for money from towns. I'm not trying to force that agenda, but I do think it's only fair to present the options to people so everybody knows what we could do. If we don't present the options, the opportunities, we could, in effect, do the track and then not be able to do the infield without disturbing the new track that we do. So we've got to consider what, weigh what are the options here, what are the opportunities. So I wanted to present that up front so that when we get to it, you've got sort of a clear view. Now, the reason that that field is overlaying the tennis courts, the current tennis courts, is exactly what you were saying, Joanna. There are wetlands that, through the final site development, made us decide to relocate the tennis courts to higher ground. It didn't make sense to put them back in harm's way, and it's not so much the wetlands, as that's a floodplain zone. So in the event that it was to flood, I would rather it was grass that flooded rather than a tennis court, you see. So we did consider all sorts. We had 8 variations that we were considering, and this is the variation that seems to give us the most utility from our limited site. We do have a lot of limitations on our regional campus. This gives us the most flexibility, and if we choose not to do a particular part, it leaves us options for the future. So even if we didn't do that field over where the tennis courts are, it would leave it available for us to eventually do, if not today. So this is how we came to agree on this particular site. Brian?
Just one question. I'm looking at the slide thing, and you got option 1, the new tennis court, $1.4 million in cost. But if I'm looking at this one, I'm looking at 1.277.
That doesn't include the cost of Gale, the 120,000 we pay Gale for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we get to put on the contractor's, additional cost on there. Right, exactly. So that was a great question.
Doug?
Yes. So you have an option 2 that would still honor our agreement with the towns, not to go back for more money.
This is as close to bare bones as we could get, that option 1. So it's either we go with option 1, or as you'll see later on, there may be another opportunity that if with the support of the Regional Finance Committee, if they were to agree that maybe they'd like to go to the community with that, that would be for them to let us know. So
That sounds like we're going back to the towns and
Well,
more money.
You're going back to ask them to authorize you to spend more money. Where we get the money from won't be them. You'll hear that part
Yeah,
later.
that's right.
We're getting the money from a different source.
Sounds crooked.
No,
No,
it's
it's not.
open and it's honest. We'll get to that point
I'm
though.
dying to hear it.
Yeah?
Oh, good. Okay, so if you can suspend disbelief for right now, by the time we get to it, I think you'll see that we're going to lay everything out. And again, this was the most bare bones project that we could get, that option number 1. So I think we could probably do some cutting in our budget to get there, but it will be very tight,
Okay, Chris?
My comment to that would be, we've asked I'm on the subcommittee, so I was at the meetings. We've asked the engineering firm to present, they own a contract to design the site. We said, potentially, the towns may not want to do the others. We have a commitment, which I agree with you, to do the track and the tennis courts. So if the towns say we don't want to do it, we can still build that. This is if the towns decide they want to upgrade the balance of the facilities. It's not a holding their hands to the fire, it's a all or nothing type deal.
Asked them for the money, they made it clear that.
The tennis courts and track.
not to
Now
go
we're coming
for more
back,
money. That's-
no, for other facilities, for softball, for practice field, and for field hockey. That's the difference in the plan, because it's more cost effective to do those at this time while you're on the site and it's all torn up.
But
So-
keep in mind that, every year we have to go to these towns for more money for funding for our school. And if we tell them we're gonna do one thing and we start doing another, these funds are gonna be harder to achieve. They're not gonna have the trust in us.
This is the town's option, though, that's why we're gonna go and ask them, do you endorse it? We're not saying you have to, because you're still getting what we have the money and the obligation to do. It's if they wanna entertain it. It's not, I understand what you're saying, but you always have to upgrade your facilities, whether it's the fields or the buildings.
And I said that too. I told you that if, in fact, that's what the towns wanna do, let's finish what we started. We identified the problem areas, we went to the towns, and we decided we were gonna ask them to help. They were gracious enough to give us the money, and we said that's all it was gonna be. Now, if we go ahead and fix what we told them we'd fix, And then if we wanna start a new project, invite them back in to see the problems that we identified through the first project, then that's legit, it's the way to go.
I think, Doug, the one difficulty for me would be if we completed only the track and then we asked them, do you want to do the infield? They'd say, well, why didn't you ask us up front? Because now you've done the track, and, you know.
Exactly right, but
Yeah.
the only thing that they're gonna be looking at in that infield
Yeah.
is drainage
Mhm.
and irrigation.
Mhm.
And it's not gonna be a whole lot of money to put a pipe under that track for those two features for down the road.
Mhm.
Plumb it now for what you foresee will be there,
Yeah,
but then go back to the towns.
yeah,
We've been over this and over this, and it keeps coming back, and I'm assured that, you know, we're not gonna be spending any more money.
yeah.
And then a week too later goes by, and it's back on the table. I don't understand it.
Well, if you
I
give us,
didn't think we operated that way. I'm very upset over this.
I know, if you give us a chance to get to the end, I think it will be clearer though for you.
Okay, Wayne?
I would just hope that the 9 committee members would take what he had asked us to do, listen to the whole thing, get to the end, and he'll explain to us, and any questions we might have at that point, take notes, jot down, have them for him at the end.
Yeah.
He's already explained to us that he has some solutions at the end of proposals, and I would ask all 9 of us to go along with Dr. Malqueen's wishes. Just listen, let him get to the end, let's ask him all the questions you
Yeah.
want at that point.
And I would ask that all 9 of us remember, we made a commitment to the 3 communities regarding the funding of this project.
Yep,
And we're only as good as our word.
That's
But
right.
Over and over.
If I can, Doug, what I believe the superintendent's trying to do and what Wayne is trying to tell all of us is that let's go through the whole thing, and Greg has a part in this and everything, maybe we're not going to go back to the towns,
right.
okay?
So I'm
let's-
gonna provide you with some information. So I provide, you decide. That's what the superintendent does, right? So the role of the superintendent is to provide you with information, and then the role of the school committee is to decide. So, you know, we'll go from there,
Okay.
all right?
Can
Okay.
I just ask a math question? Just
Yes.
Okay, so is this right here,
Mhm.
this is gonna be this is the field hockey field?
That's the
this-
current field hockey field.
And so in your option 2, this would be the new grass field hockey field, and this would be the new grass practice field?
Yep.
Is that right? And so how many sports could use the new grass, or do you get to that, like is this
It's-
like football?
it's all purpose.
Anyone can use the,
There's no,
okay,
yep.
okay.
Okay, my last question, I'll take the honor, is, number one, why is it right up to the street on the football practice field? The last drawing I saw, it was moved back, and we still had 30 parking spots. Not to be we're losing the revenue on that, and I don't know why, but also, we had discussed about the towns helping plow this under and level it off, and plant it, and do the whole thing.
Yep.
Is that still in the works?
Yeah, so this proposal has the parking spaces eliminated. That was what we just discussed at our meeting. And we also talked about relocating some parking behind the high school so that we would have at least that number of spaces opened up behind the high school. And then the last part, Jack, what was your other question?
Why is it so close to the street?
The town was going to do
Oh, yeah,
this.
and so there are some pockets of opportunity here for towns to do some work for us, but it doesn't free up the kind of capital that you can depend on to really make a big substantial savings for you. So, again, these are the 2 options that the committee has asked for me to bring forward to you, so, and that's what I'm doing, you know, for right now.
Okay, because I am all for, based upon what the Groveland DBW did for us at the school.
That's right.
We saved substantial amounts of money.
Yep.
Substantial amounts of money. And I'm wondering what this field even, what it costs for the field hockey.
Right.
And what it costs for this.
That's right.
What's the
It's right,
cost?
it's right there. Look in the back. Underneath that little thing, this front page is the cost estimates for every single
Yeah,
aspect
all
of
the
the
cost
project.
estimates are right there for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good, okay. All right, so that's the overview of the field project for right now. So if you can keep that in mind, we're going to come to it later on, all right? So the next slide, slide number 4, this will take about 30 seconds for you because you already feel this inside. You already know it's true. This is just putting a little bit of information to it. So the bottom line is that the state, over the course of years, has been transferring educational responsibilities, the funding of education, to local communities. These are some of the examples that I can share with you to demonstrate that. So for instance, from 2009 to 2013, there's been about a $1 million Chapter 70 reduction. And you can see, from 2001 to 2012, you can see the drop from 54% to 42% in Chapter 70 funding for the district. I also included a transportation revenue shortfall for us. And I wanted to just take a minute to explain this because sometimes things are framed in a way that you need to dig a little bit lower down to understand. So in the governor's proposal, in the governor's budget, you would hear language like this. Regional districts have been level funded for transportation. So that sounds like a good thing, right? Level funding, that should mean that we have as much this year and as next year. But unfortunately, if you go down one level of information, you would find out that the number of regional districts has increased, so the pie now is divided by more regional districts. So we actually, for level funding, that translates into a $35,000 decrease in transportation for us.
From our estimate, not from actual.
From our estimate, right. So I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes you have to go down a level of, but overall, the state is transferring responsibility to regional districts and to every local community, right?
Jeff, but our transportation cost next year is gonna go up too because of the contract, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
So expenses go up and we're
We're level
the
funded
revenue
from last
is
year.
the revenue is going down, yeah. So on the next page, page 3, this gives you a snapshot of how we've been spending our money. And if you look over at the right-hand column, the 4-year trend on slide number 5, you can see that I have been minimizing the expenses in things like administration, but putting the money back into our student services and for our facilities. The bottom slide shows you about the same kind of thing. You can see that we have about a 3% administrative overhead, which I think is really very lean in our district, or for any district. But the rationale for me to be very lean on administration has been that we've got to boost up our instructional engine in the district. And why is that true? Well, on the next slide, it tells you that last summer, in the summer of 2013, I sent out over 300 surveys to parents whose children who were either already out or were being taken out of the district. And the 86 or so parents who responded sent me a very strong message. There was very strong agreement that we needed to improve our curriculum and student services, and we needed to improve our facilities. Those are the two big issues that were taking kids away from our district. So the rationale that I've had last year and this year about pumping funding toward those two things is so that we grow our credibility for parents and that we retain more of our students. Now you're going to hear a little bit more about that as we go into the next slide, slide number 8. On the operating expense side of the budget, our budget, if you look at that, our option number 1 would be included in that. Our budget expenses are only going up 0.66%, less than 1%. That's pretty good. On the revenue side, we're having a little bit of difficulty. Transportation projections, you know, I already talked about that, down 35,000. School choice is down 52,000. Now, we had projected a bigger number than that, if you remember. So here's the good news. The reason that our number is lower is that we have fewer students seeking options outside of the district right now for school choice. So we have a waiting list to come in, and you all have given me the direction to begin to wean our district away from overdependence on students coming into the district. But the good news is more students are opting to stay and not choosing to go out for school choice. So that dropped our projection down to only 52,000 for the revenue shortfall. In my budget proposal, I'm proposing that we reduce, or that we eliminate bus fees, which is only $40,000, and annually, at least since I've been here 2 years, has been a huge point of contention for parents. User fees for athletics and clubs, you know that I was asking for us to eliminate that as well, and that's about $218,000 if we were to eliminate it in full. And why eliminate student user fees for athletics and clubs? Because it would distinguish us to be very different than our neighbors. Lots of other districts are also charging for user fees in athletics and clubs, and as the housing market begins to free up a little bit, we want to be different in that way from our neighbors so that people will opt to come to our district. Yeah. Oh, and I left one off too. So this one I left off because it's been such a usual part of what we talked about. The E&D account. So you all know that typically about $400,000 or $500,000 was brought along annually through E&D to help pay for the next year's budget. And that's sort of like using a credit card each year. The auditors agree with me that we need to discontinue that practice, but I can't do it all in 1 year. So I'm going to limit our E&D, if we can, to $200,000 for this year. Depends how much is actually certified as available to us. So rather than $400,000, I'm trying to wean us off of that. Next year, my hope is that we're really weaned off of E&D and we're able to begin building some, what towns would call free cash in case we have an emergency. And then that wouldn't mean for us to have to go back to towns, you know, to ask for money in the case of an emergency. So I'm sorry about leaving that part off there. So are there any questions so far, anything that comes to mind right now? Because I've gone through a little bit. Jill?
Well, you're listing for the club and user fees for the full amount. Is there any discussion about doing like a two-step method over the years?
Yeah, there is. So what you'll see is, as we go forward in this presentation, there are going to be some options that come up.
Okay.
And yes, exactly right. So maybe we only reduce by half, and maybe we take longer to reduce, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, you're exactly right. There is some of that discussion coming up.
Any other questions as far as we've gone? Nope.
All right, very good. So
Page 5.
page 5. We're almost there. So if you think back to the two scenarios, yep, here we go.
There we go.
So there are two scenarios, two big picture scenarios that I'm proposing, and there are 3 approaches to funding them. So 2 scenarios, 3 approaches. In scenario number 1, we would have the middle school green repair project. We would have eliminated bus fees. We would add a social emotional support component to Page and Bagnell School. You may recall that that was through some administrative shifts, but it would result in some added support to both Page and Bagnell. We would add a late bus on Wednesdays for the middle school and high school campus. We'd eliminate user fees for athletics and clubs, and we would only have the track and tennis courts that option number 1 included. Okay? Yeah.
Is there a reason for the late bus on Wednesday?
Yeah, I guess a couple of years back, when you had the every other Wednesdays that you were freeing up for professional development, they eliminated the late bus. Now that we've gone to a different schedule, there's a gap there. So we'd like to reinstitute that late bus for Wednesdays.
And is that the only day they need a late bus?
Well,
No,
they already have
it's
them
on
Tuesday and Thursday.
Oh, okay.
The request was made by, I checked, the cost is actually $8,000
Yeah.
to get it back for the
How
year.
much, I'm sorry?
How much
It's $8,000 for the
Yeah.
year.
for the year?
Yeah.
8,000.
Yeah.
So we found a way to shoehorn that back in.
Yeah, right. So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two would be all of the things that you see over on the right, except we would not eliminate the fees. We would carry half of the fees forward. And Greg will describe to you in a little bit about how that would impact how we could actually move forward. You would get a new track, new tennis courts, new softball, new field hockey, new practice field. All right? So in scenario number one, there's only one approach that we would take, and very straightforward. And you can see the assessments are listed here for Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury. So the total bump up of our budget is about 0.66%. And you can see that Groveland would be at 3.65%, Merrimack at 3.9%, and West Newbury at 6.67%. All right? Do you want to say anything else, Greg, there?
I'm sure everybody looks at the big disparity of why West Newbury is so much higher. That is because of the dreaded two-step formula. The net minimum spending amounts are still tracking to West Newbury until they meet the state, what the state feels should be their educational contribution. So that's just how it plays out.
Question. 3.6, 3.93, that's good.
Yeah.
What are the dollars?
You want to know them now, or I can give you them all at the end?
Can we wait till the end?
Okay,
Ted?
okay, the
I've
end.
got-
Wait,
That's
wait,
fine.
wait till
I get them all lined up here.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine.
We're ready to go.
That's fine.
I had a question on slide 13.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a West Newbury. Can I get a confirmation on that?
Slide 13?
Yeah.
We're not up there yet,
We're
are we?
not there
Okay.
yet.
All right.
Well, I think it's gonna fall in with this one.
All right. West Newbury. Let's see. Yep. So I see the error.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, you typed the 5 instead
Oh,
of 6.
percentage, that's a lot. Good
Well,
catch, Lisa.
Yeah, it's like a fire sale here, so, you know. Yep, so, you know, I there's a little percentage here. So we'll get to that. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. So scenario number two. Scenario number two has two approaches. It can be approach number 2 or approach number 3. With approach number 2, you can see the percentages. The budget would go up 0.79%, and you can see Groveland would be at 3.93, Merrimack at 4.21, and West Newbury at 5.90. Now, in a little bit, you'll see these all on one page, so you can make comparisons. Yeah. And in approach number 3, you can see that the total percentage is different. Do you remember that one, Greg? I just copied the slide over. What's this total percentage?
The expense budget would drop to I guess, it doesn't drop a lot. My guess would be like 0.7,
It's not 0.79.
no, it's not 0.79, it's like 0.71 or
It's lower than 0.79.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's lower than 0.79.
It's not a huge value in dollars. What it works out to
Yeah.
be is a reduction of about $73,000 in debt.
Two scenarios, but there's 3 approaches.
Yeah. And you can see that
It's just by increase.
Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury all have a drop in the percentage. So I've got that all compared on the next slide, and I do have the right percentages listed for you in the comparison. So on slide 13, you'll see we have a 0.66 increase, or a 0.79 increase, or a 0.58 increase. And you can see the increases
That's
in the
right, so
set.
it doubled, that's right,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
And you can see the associated increases with each town. West Newbury in scenario number 1 on this slide is 6.67, just so everybody's clear. Okay. So,
I think it's supposed to be the 5.67, quite
yeah,
frankly.
so
Yeah.
what I want Greg to do is explain what the different approaches mean to you so that you can be really clear about, how to fund them.
Good evening. By the way, thank you all for your questions that came in during the week. I appreciate it. I'm still trying to get my hands around the budget Mike created and tweak it as we go forward. But I appreciate the questions I got. They were excellent and they helped me dig a little deeper into things I should get to know a little better as well. Scenario one, the difference between the budget we were handed out originally at a 1% increase was readjusting the numbers after the governor's budget came out. For revenue, as well as not being hurt as badly on school choice. So what we did is what has always been done. Costs of janitorial services were put into the school choice revolving account. That was the drop in expenses you'll see. That's the only difference between the budget you were originally given and the budget you get now. You pulled some of the janitorial services into revolving. And there was a slight adjustment for losing some transportation aid. That's the only thing. Scenario two, approach number two. That is now the reduction of 0.5 of the athletic fees using the additional funds to do an additional borrowing to complete the project. This goes to Doug's, I guess it's more semantics, Doug, when we talk about it. We're asking the towns to allow us to borrow the money, but we're not getting the money from them. It'll be not taking the full user fees. That'll be going to it. That fits with the superintendent's idea of the survey that we need to upgrade our facilities. Yes, go ahead.
We're not borrowing the money from the towns.
No, you have to ask the
We're
town's
asking for
permission to
permission.
borrow
What are we paying money back with?
the user fees. No, by not reducing them 100%, we'll only be reducing them 50%.
So we'll
The
be,
argument would be going forward is you get to tell all the student athletes and people that you're gonna get better facilities and we're gonna cut your user fee in half.
so we'd be using $110,000 or so, $108,000 to pay that over the long period.
It also includes in this assessment, bringing finally all the allowed borrowing that was already spent for the middle high school theater, the high school theater project, bringing the $700,000 forward that we still had authorization to borrow, adding the additional money we need to complete the project. And we can pay that back over 20 years with a principal payment in the first year. Because right now, all we've been doing is paying interest on the $100,000 because we haven't bonded it yet. So basically, number two is a bond approach. Now, number three, yeah, go ahead, Don.
Number two, a bond approach. It's a loan that we have to pay back.
Oh, absolutely, the district has to pay it back.
And we're gonna pay that back with user fees?
Yep, that's where the revenue will come from. That's when the superintendent talked about the options. This is where we start to see all our options.
Right.
Is option two, $2,624,000?
It'd be, well, yes, but not, we wouldn't be borrowing that full amount because we still have the $495,000 that was released from the state. So we'll be bringing in the $700,000 plus an additional 1.4. The 2.1 plus the 495 gets us to 2.6. The advantage to that is now we've bonded it, we've taken care of our issues, we know what we have going forward. Now, by making a debt service payment, obviously, that's a budget item, it drives the assessments. Number three is the exact same thing, but we run another ban. In the first year, we have no debt, we pay an interest payment, but not we won't make a debt service payment. So we'd be doing the same thing we're doing now, rolling forward and just making an interest payment for a year. That allows the cost of the budget to drop a little bit, it drops the assessments a little bit. Now there's a good and a bad to this. The good part of it is, the assessments are lower, and as we go forward, finally the middle school roof comes off the next year. So the debt service payment we make to that could then be shifted, again, no assessment increase.
Just because a loan is being paid off.
Paid back. I wish they were paid off.
Paid back.
Yeah.
I just don't see that as freeing up money, tax dollars, to pay a bill that we told the town we wouldn't create.
Well, no, that was always the original source of the 800,000. We've been banning that, knowing when the middle school roof came off, then we'd bond it and just continue that cost going forward. That's always where that was coming from. That is exactly the proposal we had made going forward. The only difference between what was originally proposed is we're going to try to do the whole project at once to basically meet the needs of the survey, to get all the buildings and grounds up to snuff, and only cut the user fees in half. That's the only difference. We're not asking the taxpayers for any more money. We're just saying, instead of having a $1,000 family cap, you'll have a $500 family cap. Instead of football costing $400, now it'll cost $200. And you'll be getting better facilities. That's the decision points we were talking about earlier, and the discussion points. But I think the towns, when you tell people you're gonna get better facilities and you're gonna get your fee cut in half, that's a pretty good headline, huh? Yeah.
Jill, go ahead.
They're really great. I just want to make sure I understand this scenario 2 and scenario 2, approach 3, those two.
Yeah.
They're both having a reduced user fee of 50%,
Yes.
each of those. The only thing, based on past history, we've always had a certain amount of kids in different sports, in different organizations and plays and things like that, but it is a variable. You never know whether or not that's gonna be reduced. My inkling is it's gonna go up because the cost is going down. So it's like we were talking about reducing the price of lunch one time. If you reduce milk down, more kids tend to do it. But it is a variable.
It is a
I
variable,
just wanna
but a
make
lot
sure
of
that
our
we all know
sports
this.
are capped at the number of, and they've met that cap.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, some of the sports like cross-country, you can have 1,000 kids, but you can't get any more kids on a hockey team or any
Right.
more kids on a basketball team, so I don't think the variable hurts as much in that scenario.
Yeah,
Okay, I have a question. My question is if we take facilities option 2 and we
Which,
gear it with,
Scenario.
okay, what page you wanna get?
I'm on page 7,
Facilities, scenario 2.
scenario approach 3, okay?
Yep,
Then that's going to drop down the
assessment increases.
little, right?
A little bit, yep.
And we're gonna get everything that's needed, and we're not gonna ask for any more tax dollars.
Nope, we're just delaying the debt service payment, not the interest payment, but the principal payment, 1 year. To wait till the middle school to catch up.
21, not 20, right?
No, well, yeah, well, it'd be in 21 interest payments, 20 principal payments, yeah.
Doug, you have the question, go.
Scenario 1 would eliminate user fees altogether, that's correct, right?
Yes,
Okay.
So basically, on our subcommittee, we looked at it that by keeping half the athletic fees, they're paying for their improved facilities over time.
And it's
Why it
just the
seemed
athletic.
reasonable.
and nothing prevents us from looking forward as we go forward in the budget to continue reducing them. It's just that right now, if you want to borrow money, you need a verifiable funding source, and this is ours, without asking for overrides from the town or their own money. This is our solution to the problem. It almost, when you come back to it, you really don't know the cost of everything till you go to bid and all that fun stuff anyways. So right now, we're just dealing with the information we know. It was kind of like the elementary school projects, we thought we had a number, and both towns had to go back and ask for a little more. From the time frame we actually thought we were going to do this to now has been almost 3 years. Obviously, the costs have gone up and things, so I'm not so sure we could do the track and the tennis courts in a fashion that you'd really want them to be. You want to do a nice track that you could have meets at, that meets the MIA standards. You want to have nice tennis courts, you really want to do that infield. I look out the window at it, it's a mud pit.
Right. And the point is, that's what we stepped up to do, was the tracks and
But,
tennis courts.
but without doing the middle of the track, it becomes almost unusable, the middle. It's just, you'd have a nice track holding all that water in.
I don't think that's the case. I think it would be, they'd plant grass there just like they always have, and it would be suitable for soccer or lacrosse or anything else they've ever used it for. I disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Chris has got a question.
Chris?
This comes down to integrity of the school committee, is what it comes down to.
I have a question about, so, I think I understand, but are rising interest rates at all a factor in either scenario, approach 2 or 3?
I have an estimated interest rate of 4% for the life of the bond.
Okay, so would it
Historically,
make more sense to go with approach 2, is that getting locked into our debt earlier at a lower interest rate, then most likely they're gonna be increasing.
You know, quite frankly, I don't see any big changes in interest rates coming. They haven't in the last few years. I don't see them coming anywhere in the near future.
Okay, I mean, that's, I didn't know if there was anything
Yeah, I
that
mean,
we
I
needed to
just,
factor in.
it just gets you ahead of the game and gets you started.
Right.
And then when the middle school roof comes off, then you have available revenue that was not debt excluded, that was budgetary, that you can use to either for expenses going forward or reducing the assessments for 2016.
Joanna,
Yeah, so, I think I saw an email that one of the reasons the grounds committee was looking at scenario two was because there was some pressure from members of the community who weren't happy with just doing the track and the tennis courts, and so there were people out there who wanted to see a second option. Is that the case? Is that,
Well, we have at least one person who's been coming regularly and urging us to consider more than just the bare minimum.
yeah.
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 And I think that's one of the reasons that I think providing the option to people is a better idea than not.
Yeah, 'cause I have heard from people out there that there are some who weren't happy with just the bare minimum right now. So I think it is fair to try to represent the desires of some of the other people in the community, because I have heard this, and it just gives them.
I believe they're out there, and I think it would be something the committee could look at, and do what we promised these communities. Do what we said we were gonna do with the money, and then have another survey, or decide to go to phase two, and then approach the towns. And at that point, you could reinstate your half user fees, or if the towns wanted to be no user fees. But it boils down to, we presented a problem to the communities, they presented a solution, and now we're changing the problem. We're changing what we told them we needed to do. And it just comes down to our word. I've been saying this from day one. We
Doug.
told them we were gonna do something, and we're switching it around. So I can't beat it into, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here tonight. But we're all about transparency. We're all about doing what we say we're gonna do. That's what this whole new brand is. World-class education. Isn't that part of it? Integrity?
I think that the district, and I'm just gonna say a whole bunch of things, that the district is keeping its integrity, we're being transparent, okay? We're not going to go up on taxes, we're not going to give the added on to the taxpayer, okay? We're not going to do that. But if we take, it's the same way, you were on the Bagnell committee, you know, okay? Okay, well, now we're gonna put in a, air conditioner in the administration office. How much? $60,000. You get it done cheaper, okay? But everything's about staging, getting all the equipment there. If they're gonna bulldoze one, they're gonna bulldoze 5 spots, okay? The thing I look at is under these, and this is the first time I've seen them. I haven't seen any of these ahead of you people. I'm seeing them for the first time. And to say to the town, okay, this is what we want to do. And it's gonna go before the Regional Finance Committee. This is what we wanna do. And they're gonna stand there and probably scratch their head and say, what are you looking for us? You're not asking for any more money. And we're gonna give them a world-class fields on everything, okay? Now, I questioned why the softball field is going in, because I'm told, well, softball's gonna be off campus and blah, blah, blah. He's the chairman of the board, and he's, of the subcommittee, he's saying, yeah, same thing. We were always figuring that, now we've got them in here. Again, we got the softball field in here. But I add up the 2 fields that I had fought when we went to the meetings, and Wayne can abide by. I went and I said, $660,000 for the practice football field, and other teams can play on it, okay? And for a field hockey field, okay? More than $500,000, okay? Now, is that something that can be worked in? So if they go and say, okay, yeah, we'll do everything, but, and if the towns agree, their DBWs or whoever, right?
That's right.
Says, I know Lenny Mear's gonna be out there with a bulldozer. He promised us he'd be on there.
That's another advantage to scenario 2 at this point, because as we produce the assessments, we're not going to bond, so in other words, going forward, you may not have to borrow as much money. So that's another advantage to scenario 2, as well as the lower assessment, you have more definitive cost, because by the time the next year's assessment comes around, not only are you done, you know exactly what you spent and all that stuff, so you're an exact number, as opposed to, right now, a supposed number. You still have the exact number, but it would affect how you play the assessment going forward.
Doug, I was with you. We made a promise it would not go on the taxpayer's bill. This is not going on the taxpayer's bill. They gave us $1 last year, we're getting $1 this year. Okay? This is what we're going up. We're not going up anything. We're not doing it. I think that a lot of people probably said it, but I think that they probably look at us and said, what are you guys thinking? It's not gonna cost any more money. Why the heck don't you do the whole thing and get it done? Get it off the backs.
Well, they've all told us to do it all at once, because if you do it in a piecemeal, it's not gonna get done.
Or it'll be so much more expensive.
Right. So, I mean, I know where you're coming from. I honestly believe that we're being transparent, okay? I honestly believe that we're not shafting the public. I don't know how much it works out to be if we went with option 1, with just doing the 2, and then come back after another year has gone by, and we say, okay, now we want to do this and this and this. And by the way, how are they gonna get to that softball field? Well, I don't know, that's their problem, okay, rent a helicopter, I guess. But the fields, the same thing, okay? I feel as if the towns are willing to help us out and do the demolition and do the preliminary stuff, that should knock down that 660,000 something. Okay, it should save us something. And your tax bill is not going to go up penny one. And we're being honest with the public. And it's going to FinCom. FinCom said, the Regional Finance Committee says, hey, this is crazy. No, you said you were gonna do the tennis courts and you were gonna do the track. That's all we want. Then bring it back to the committee, and the committee does at that time what they wish to do. They can override it, buck heads or whatever, or just say, nope, you don't want it, that's what we're doing. Okay, Jill's had her hand up, okay, I'll get you Wayne. Yes.
I, again, want to thank the committee, because these are 3 very well thought out scenarios. And I think what you're looking for is a consensus from us of option 1, or scenario 1, 2, with approach 2 or 3, to go forward to the FinCom, or the Regional Finance Committee, as well as to the town, and let them decide. So you want a consensus from us, is that correct?
Yeah, so if I could get a consensus tonight, then by the time we come back on the 25th for our budget hearing, I can give you information from the Regional Finance Advisory Council and let you know, are they willing to move forward? Are they willing to support this? Or do they want us to go in a different direction? And I think that would be important information for us.
Okay.
It would also give me time to give you a new budget showing exactly what decisions you made tonight with a final assessment that's exact.
Yeah.
Jack, approach 3 is just a quick question. Approach 3 is after the middle school roof is paid for, correct? We're just paying the interest until,
Right, and then next year we pay $70,000 a year in principal. The principal on this would be $73,000 a year.
Okay, Wayne, you were
I was just gonna say, if you wanted a flavor on how the athletic parents feel, if you go to some of the athletic events at Pentucket, you'll hear them be very loud and often about the facilities here. And I'm guessing, just generally speaking, they're gonna be extremely excited about having their fees reduced by half, but more excited about having their fees go directly into the improvement of the facilities that is gonna aid their son and daughter from the condition of the field hockey fields, from, we're talking injuries, 60-something% off campus. Now their son and daughter won't have to drive as much. They won't have to cart them around. Last night's game, not only did I hear from Pentucket people on how our facilities presently are, but unfortunately the opposition is even louder on how the facilities are. at Pentucket. And here's a chance to have them have it reduced and support what they want, what's best for their son and daughter, and at the same time, look how good it looks for Pentucket. It's a win-win-win, and I don't think it has too much to do with honesty. It's out there. So when you get a chance, go to some athletic events here at Pentucket. Boys, girls, football, basketball, baseball, you'll hear it, and you'll get a very, very positive flavor on how they're going to be excited when they hear this.
Did you have a question?
No, I
Right.
was gonna make a
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
Can
Wayne?
I ask a question
Be
and
my
so
guest.
know how to make the right motion? I want to know what Greg and Jeff's preferred option is under scenario 2, approach 2 or approach 3. What is fiscally in the best interest of the district?
Fiscally in the best interest, again, I'd like to think one of my better strengths is forecasting. Now, if you went with, obviously the pragmatism of producing a budget and assessment to the 3 towns that they will support and can afford. We are a little bit, not a lot, over what was originally proposed to them. Actually, with the no debt principle, we are a little under for 2 of the 3 towns what was originally proposed before the governor's page came out, after the shifting goes along. But we have to be sensitive to West Newbury because the 2-step hurts them a lot. We want to, whether it falls on the 2 out of the 3. When I was in Groveland, I've been on the other side. It's not fun, but it still matters. But if we do scenario 2, and next year the middle school roof comes off, and we've already factored in the debt service principle into number 2, that frees up your money to eliminate the user fees in the following year. Now, we're not saying it can't happen under scenario 2, approach 3, scenario 2. But we just don't know, maybe the transportation aid will go up and that'll aid us in that thing. But if you really want to look at it, and if you ask me what is the best way to go forward, keeping in mind the town's assessments, getting us what we want, and having definitive costs before we go to borrow, scenario 2, approach 3, I think benefits the greatest number of people.
And I was gonna make a motion, the committee approve the scenario 2, approach 3.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Motion passes.
3.
Great.
3. Maybe this is like letting the cat out of the
Well,
horse out
kind
of the barn.
kind of
What-
by that
what-
motion, you just took care of your list. You just approved
Right.
the green repair, the bus
It
fees.
included everything up
Yeah,
above that.
yes.
Yeah.
Good job.
Is the intention?
And a basketball game
Am I
again, too,
understanding
so.
that correctly? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's
Sounds
not
good
that
to
you
me.
don't enjoy the conversation, but
Are we all done, Jack? Mr. Chairman,
you just ended it.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So
All
I
those
will
in favor?
have
Any
a budget
discussion?
prepared based upon these decisions for your meeting on the 25th for the public hearing. I will get them out to you ahead of time by email, so you'll have them.
We will have the assessments.
I have sample assessments now based on all these things, but I want to go through it one more time just to make sure I'm
Okay,
correct.
okay. And by then, we will have had the regional finance committee meeting.
On the
Yep.
13th.
On the
Yeah.
13th.
Basically, you just pick this one.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of adjourning? Very good.
Oh, except for eliminate user fee, that's a no. Now it's reduce user fee by
Okay.
50 is a yes.
Yeah.
Okay.